Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're journeying back in time to explore a pivotal and complex chapter in history. The British colonization of Australia. How did a continent on the other side of the world become part of the British Empire? Let's find out. Our story begins in the late 18th century. After losing its American colonies, Britain was facing a crisis. Its prisons were overflowing. The government needed a new, remote location for a penal colony. The solution, a distant land recently charted by Captain James Cook in 1770, which he had claimed for Britain and named New South Wales. In 1788, this plan was put into action. A fleet of 11 ships, famously known as the First Fleet, sailed into what is now Sydney Harbor. On board were over 1,400 people, including more than 700 convicts, along with Marines, sailors, and officials. On January 26th, a date now observed as Australia Day, Governor Arthur Phillip hoisted the British flag at Sydney Cove, officially establishing the penal colony of New South Wales. But how did the British justify taking this vast land? They used a legal concept called terra nullius, which is Latin for land belonging to no one. This principle conveniently ignored the fact that the continent was already home to hundreds of distinct nations of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who had lived there for over 60,000 years, nurturing a deep spiritual and cultural connection to the land. From the British perspective, because the Indigenous peoples didn't build permanent settlements or farm in the European style, the land was considered renowned and ripe for the taking. This single, flawed assumption would have devastating and lasting consequences. The initial years of the Sydney Cove settlement were incredibly tough. The colonists struggled with unfamiliar soil, strange seasons, and the constant threat of starvation. However, the British were determined to make the colonies succeed. As more convict fleets arrived, the settlement began to expand. New outposts were established, pushing further into Indigenous territories. This expansion wasn't peaceful. It marked the beginning of a long and tragic period of dispossession for First Nations people. As settlers moved inland, they took over traditional hunting grounds and sacred sites. This led to widespread conflict, but the most significant impact came from diseases introduced by the Europeans, such as smallpox, measles, and influenza. Lacking immunity, the Indigenous population was decimated. It's estimated that, from a population of around 750,000 before 1788, the number of Indigenous Australians plummeted dramatically. Over the next century, the map of Australia began to take shape. The initial penal colony of New South Wales was followed by other settlements. Van Diemen's Land, now Tasmania, was established as a particularly harsh penal colony. Free settlements also began to emerge, attracting migrants looking for new opportunities. Places like South Australia were founded on principles of planned colonization without convicts. The discovery of gold in the 1850s, particularly in Victoria and New South Wales, triggered a massive population boom. People flooded in from all over the world, including Britain, Ireland, Europe, China, and America, all hoping to strike it rich. This influx of people accelerated the expansion and development of the colonies. By the late 19th century, the continent was divided into 6 separate, self-governing British colonies: New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, South Australia, Western Australia, and Tasmania. Each had its own government, laws, and even its own railway system. However, a sense of shared identity and common interests began to grow. The colonies realized that they would be stronger together, able to manage issues like defense, immigration, and trade more effectively as a single entity. After years of debates, conventions, and referendums, the colonies agreed to unite. On January 1st, 1901, the Commonwealth of Australia was born. The 6 colonies became states within a new federated nation, and the modern country of Australia was formed. This event marked the end of the colonial era and the beginning of Australia's journey as an independent nation. But the legacy of its colonial origins continues to shape its society, politics, and its ongoing journey towards reconciliation with its first peoples. And that's a brief look at the colonization of Australia. It's a story of ambition, struggle, and profound impact that continues to be discussed and re-examined today. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this video interesting, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more historical deep dives. We'll see ya in the next one.